Good afternoon, guys and girls. Everybody okay? Yeah? Anybody jet lagged? Yeah. See, I'm not alone. Right. As Jonah said, my name's Ben Toms. I'm a technical director at DataJar. Also the guy behind the mule. I could phrase that better. At DataJar, we call ourselves Apple Device Management Specialists. We are part of the Apple Consultants Network. We have customers that we have Monkey and open source solutions for, as well as we do a lot of work with Jamf. So we're Jamf integrators, as per the top. We're a Jamf Gold reseller. We're a Jamf MSP. What that means is we host Jamf for people, but it's not just like a Jamf cloud where they manage it. We manage the end-to-end Jamf install for them. And that's our little DataJar.mobi platform. Now, this talk's going to be a little bit about letting go and letting the robot kind of help you, letting the automation. Don't be scared, okay? It's fine. And the reason we kind of do this is when I mentioned that we've got this DataJar.mobi platform, we don't just have one JSS that we look after. We actually have around 100 on our own platform. So we can't be sitting there faffing about, got it in early, with Composer and doing the policies and all that. We want something that's going to automate and help make us more available for our customers and in some ways actually make it more secure in what the software we're delivering. So there's kind of 3 automated deployment mechanisms that we're going to cover off a little bit today. You've got your VPP, your Autopkg, and patch. And patch is where John's going to come in. So the idea is I'm going to blitz through these bits as much as possible. Then John can do his patch thing, and then you can really grill him on the Q&A. That's the plan, okay? Yeah. So, VPP. The nice thing about VPP is it applies to your macOS and your iOS devices. The other mechanisms that we're going to look at don't. And recently, Apple have kind of made the built-in apps that you get, the iLife, the iWork, if anybody else remembers those old terms. Yeah, a few nodded. We can now get them free. So you go through, you set up your account. Has anybody here actually, show of hands, who's actually using VPP and kind of gone through this already? Cool. So yeah. So I'm not going to go through the whole DUNS process, all that stuff, but you go through, you set up a system with Apple, then you get access to your VPP portal. Then you can buy applications. And the application we're going to use for all these kind of demos and things, the example today is the MUT, which I hope everybody knows of the MUT, or there's a session on it, which I can't remember when it is, but the mass update tool. It's a great little app. Have a look at it. So, for example, in here, in the VPP, we can go and purchase the applications. When the application's purchased, with your JSS set up, with your VPP tokens, you kind of go and make yourself a coffee, go to the toilet, whatever, go outside for a smoke, whatever you do, but 5 minutes or so, roughly, it'll appear in your JSS. The application is just there. It's like magic. And then from in here, if you look and go into the application itself, you can then assign different things such as the categories. You can also make sure if it's going to be installed automatically or prompt users to install. Now, that option, that thing at the bottom, the reason they're there together is if you've got an iOS device that's not supervised and you try and do this VPP push for these applications, and sorry, I realized I skipped something. And what we're trying to do with the VPP here, we're looking at doing the managed distribution, which you'll see when you purchase an app and it's on that screen there. The idea of this, you're going to deploy without needing an Apple ID. Because, again, if you're talking about faffing, that's another faff that you just don't want to deal with. And the nice thing with the managed distribution as well is that you keep the license as an organization. So you don't give it to someone, it doesn't stay attached to their Apple ID forever. But if you're trying to deploy an application using managed distribution to an iOS device and they're not supervised, they will be prompted to install it. It's just a little footnote on that. But from here, once you've got it in, you do your usual scoping thing. So any policies, etc., you guys have seen this. And then we go to the next tab. And this is, the real magic is this one. How many people with VPP set up have tried to deploy an app and actually forgot to tick that button? Come on, own up, come on. It happens. But one of a guy called Nick Cheetham, I can't remember his role, but he's a Jamf over in Amsterdam, was telling me that the way you kind of go through a JSS and navigate, and I never thought of this, was top down, left to right. So you go through the general, go through every section in there, and scope in every section in there, and then VPP. And it does actually, even though I've been using Jamf for years, it's kind of sat with me now and means that I've potentially done that less. Not that I've never done it. So when a device is in scope, what you'll see, you should see an install application list command go through MDM. This is kind of a recon as such through the MDM, and it just looks at the stuff within the applications folder as such. This could take sometimes 10 minutes as well to run. It can be quite labor intensive, the timing wise can be a bit of a pain. And once the MDM part of Jamf knows that the apps are missing, then you'll start to see the apps kind of pending to install. And that's another thing that's important on this. Your Jamf install's basically got two brains with this. You've got your usual kind of, John just mentioned something earlier, but so anybody here remember the whole green JSS kind of thing, right? So yeah, so we can call that like Jamf 98, for example. And this here, this is Jamf XP because it's before Vista. Stealing people's jokes now, it's awesome. Yeah. So the application should then install on the device once they're in the group, etc., using your caching servers and whatever you have. And again, every time it runs through, it installs an app, it wants to do the install application list to make sure it's got it in there. And yep, anybody know who this guy is? Yeah. I had to write this down as well. The never-ending pie-throwing robot. Because it makes sense to have him right here in the presentation, yeah? So, but you see, this is great. It automates, it looks lovely. It's just simple, press the buttons, everything deploys, it's great. And then if you want to see your VPP content, underneath on the left-hand side, you've got your search entry and you've got your licensed software. There's this search VPP licenses, or double check what it says. Search VPP content. And what's interesting about this is actually unified. So if you go into the computer management, you'll see iOS licenses, and you go into iOS, you'll see, or your mobile devices, you'll see your Mac management. But this can be quite good if you've got content managers, people who purchase the software for you. And you can see the software, you can see how many licenses you've got, how many assignments there are in VPP, et cetera, as a way of tracking. The other thing on here as well is some of these options in here are grayed out at the moment, which is this automatically update app. So, how many of you folks using your iOS devices, for example, have got your iOS devices auto-updating? So the apps, you just don't get the updates just come down, yeah? Most? No? Okay. So this is that kind of thing, but you do this at scale for your Jamf instance. You've got an option for this for your computer management, you've got an option for this for your mobile device management as well. So they sit there. They look very much similar. So you go in, you choose to automatically update. What this is going to do, the JSS at this time, so on here we've got at midnight, it's going to go to the UK Apple Store and pull in the details. So the UK App Store and pull in the details for the applications that we have on the JSS. So it pulls down, for example, the version number, the new notes, maybe a new icon, and keeps that up to date in there. Then also, if there's devices that now need that new version, you'll see that install application list command go out pending. When the device comes online, they'll get that, and the whole dance happens again with installing the product and all that. So this is, I love this button. I love these things that just kind of click that, done, forget about it, walk away. And obviously, if you're doing this and you've got it all automated and everything, you kind of might want to manage your network. So this is where you want to look at your caching servers. This is the old kind of diagram of the caching server stuff. Obviously now with 10.13, you can have a caching service built into your macOS devices. But these can really, really speed things up. Just a quick one, so on the caching side of things, the way this kind of works is when the first version of the app's downloaded, it comes from Apple via, and it sits on here, but then the second device will just get it from the cache on that server. So it saves you that bandwidth. And caching servers are great because there's loads of content that we can also stick on there. So you've got your macOS updates, you've got your ebook kind of stuff, I think was on there, your VPP content, your iOS updates, etc. And the other thing at the bottom it's saying there about content and region restrictions. So not all content is available in all regions. And it's to be mindful of when you set this up as a multinational org and you set up the auto update, be careful where you point that to. Because it's very rare, but you could potentially try and deploy an app that's not available on that app store. You can somehow get some weird inconsistencies. But if you are a multinational org and you're buying these apps in bulk, speak to the vendor, see if they can make it available everywhere, and that, smooth that journey on for you. So I said it's magical when it works. Well, The delivery can be a bit so-so. Let's put it that way. So, yeah. So, for example, one of the things that you might struggle with, especially on 10.12 and up, and if you've got local accounts, not a directory account, you might see that actually you can have MDM-capable users being blank because you need to enable the user. Jamf have got this document here, which still applies. I know there's some bits of it say, some bits don't, for example, but you can manually try and make that user MDM capable, or you can ask them to install an item through self-service for VPP, and then that will add them as well. This is all great, except if you're in a world now where we're not binding, and we're looking at 10.12 up, you're probably also maybe using DEP. So you're having these machines delivered to someone, anywhere, it could be drop shipped to their house, and they've got this machine, but then what happens when you repurpose it? Well, the problem here is what you need to do in order to change that MDM-capable user, because you only allow one local at a time, and that's a MDM spec thing, it looks like, not a vendor issue there. You then have to go through this horrible script of removing these things. But the trouble is, you're looking at some things with DEP, you might not be able to remove the profile, so you can try and do this and have that little dance. And on 10.13, they've also SIP protected some of the folders. I won't, yeah. Thanking the person who I borrowed this off, thank you very much, and I won't ruin your name by saying who you are. So, because I know they're not very happy with this, but it makes it difficult. So you kind of, almost in the end, when you repurpose a DEP device with all local accounts, you kind of have to nuke and pave. You kind of have to reprovision, wipe it, which is a bit crazy with this kind of environment, how we're working now. But once you've done that, for example, you kind of re-enroll as you do. You can come in here with the MDM-capable users as the user in there that we need. I haven't, again, built out a proper workflow for this, but I don't know if someone's got a GitHub repo or something they can, on the Q&A mention, or some proper process for this, because that's why it's a bit, I've dug into it too much to do something where, for us, for our customers, we would tend to advise them to reprovision the machine, which means they've got to wipe the machine and start again. Well, we can wipe the machine from the JSS, then they do the reinstall. They use caching server to download the OS. It's a bit of a shame, but that's the cleanest way, or definitely more of maybe the Apple way, potentially, of doing it. And it's the other thing to be mindful of. So we're talking about managed distribution, which we're deploying the license of software to a machine, to a device. But on macOS, we need to make sure that we actually have that user logged in. It's still in the user space, even though it's coming through your MDM. So the user has to be logged in, and if it's iOS, the device has to be unlocked for these updates to kind of come through as well. They'll pend otherwise, but you can't just, it doesn't magically appear when the device is locked. Or macOS, the device is at the login window, etc. It actually needs to be in the user session. Another thing to be mindful of as well, I don't know if anybody's seen this, store download D is trying to install new software. But again, it's because this is at that user level. And what we've done on here, we've maybe got a restriction profile that's saying that require admin password to install or update apps from VPP. And again, it's that mechanism. So the MDM isn't using a different, hasn't got its own kind of way of doing it. Instead, it's kind of triggering as the user who's logged in. So be mindful of that. If you've got that checkbox, you might see that pop up, so you might want to remove that restriction. But you can still lock down the App Store to only be your updates anyway. So, yeah. The other thing as well, what happens if you're using the app and there was an update happening? Well, the updates themselves, this is if the app was currently kind of updating, you try to launch it, you'll get a message like this, or if you forced an update, and you can go into any application in the JSS, or you can go into those app update sections and hit the force button, then the user will get a prompt like this. And what they'll see in the applications folder, you've got the .app and then you've got a .app download, which is this kind of cached version of. What can sometimes happen though is, if the user closes their lid on a laptop, walks away, for example, whatever, you might find that the actual update gets stuck. So you might need to clear out those .app download versions and also clear the pending commands from the JSS in order to restart the whole process again. But it's not just in that first tab is where we want to go, which is under management. Instead, you want to look at under history and go down here at the bottom and clear them from here. So mostly it works, and after a time, they will kind of correct itself, but it's something to be mindful of. Now this was quite cool, and I don't know if this was a change that came with Jamf 9.101 or if this has been a thing that's existed previously. I know Jamf 9.101 had something to do with these minimum requirements on here, but this was a iOS 9.3.5 device, so one of those older models that can't get the newer stuff. And this was last week, deploying Pages, Word, etc. to it. So the VPP is pulling in, and it was auto-updating. It's got the latest version of these titles available in our JSS to deploy via VPP. And obviously, the device does not meet the minimum map requirements because we're not running iOS 11. But what happens is, after a while, it sorted itself out, and actually through VPP, we had deployed the older versions as we needed on this device. So that's quite good, and just in case you were wondering how that works, it does actually seem to work. At least on 9.101, I hadn't really tested it much more before that. Just a happy coincidence that this happened last week. So. The other fun thing, yeah? I can hear people. With VPP, you don't have an option of kind of the in-app purchase stuff or the additional content. You deploy the app bundle. Great. Now you've got, that's only 413 meg of Apple loops. The whole Apple loops for GarageBand's for 50 gig, I think, or something. And in a lab environment, the problem's going to be you're going to get this prompt, and then you get an admin prompt. So again, in a school, multi-user environment, they're not going to be an admin. It's horrible. So yeah, this is one of those things to be mindful of what you're doing and how you're doing this stuff. Examples of some of the great kind of projects that are out there. If you are doing these things and you want to build these workflows to extend what you're doing, you can look at Carl Ashley's done a great thing with the Apple loops. And Franton, Richard Purvis, who's here, he's done a thing about Xcode where you can add all the different devices, simulators, all that stuff as well. Now, this is a bit where this actually came up on a conversation me and John had about this. Because one of the interesting things is, like I said, Jamf is kind of this split brain with the MDM stuff and the other stuff. When an application is installed through VPP and the installed app list stuff runs, it shows in Jamf within the inventory in the usual place. But it's not there enough to trigger policies. You can't trigger smart groups. So I'm not going to hold John to this at all, but I know he promised to fix it next week. No, no, it's an interesting way, but it just means be mindful of when you're doing the Xcode and the GarageBand, look at when your inventory is happening. Because if you're doing an inventory once a week by default, and potentially it's a new machine you provisioned, and you provision it, you make sure someone's logged in with a direct AD account or a local account to then start the VPP installs. If you're then not doing a recon for another week and you've finished all your provisioning workflow, the loops aren't going to come down. And as soon as they load up the app, they're going to get those prompts. So hopefully we can get this moved into the one table, and then post the VPP install, then the smart group calculations will happen and then your policies can catch up. And so it can be a smooth process. And you can revoke the licenses as well. You can get them back and you maintain them in there. And what's kind of great is because this is basically, you guys are just having this stuff delivered. There's very little moving parts that you have to worry about. Okay. So let's talk about AutoPkg. So AutoPkg is going to be Mac only. And there's kind of two parts to it. You've got AutoPkg, which is the main product, the little command line binaries, etc. And then you've got AutoPkgr, Pkgr, the GUI front end. But they are separate projects. And the main thing is, if you look, as the slide says on there, AutoPkg is an automation framework for OS X packages and distribution. What we're going to do, I'm going to take you through this process. What I'm going to try and do is skip along this quite quick, but I wanted to kind of give you an overview of how this works. So you've basically got, generally for a JSS recipes, there'd be a three-step process. The download part, then there's the packaging part. So if the app comes in a .dmg, like Chrome, for example, as Jamf, as we can use DMGs in a different way, then we have to repackage it. And then the last bit's uploading to your Jamf Pro server. Yeah. Cool. We'll look at the MUT again, because we've actually got auto-package recipes for this on our repo. And we look at the .download recipe. It's XML. It's exciting, isn't it? So. Again, we're going to run through this. I'm going to show you the step-by-step of this, and it's trying to take away the fear of using AutoPkg and maybe to show you it's not all like smoke and mirrors. So in this .download recipe, which is just XML, you've got, for example, descriptions, identifier, name, the input, so we could change the name of the app as well, and the minimum version of Autopkg needed. And then there's all these processes. Each process is a step. And a recipe can have multiple processes in there. And so in here, for example, what we're doing, we are looking for on the URL, http jss.weebly.com, we're looking for the pattern there, which is some regex. And when it finds that URL, we're then passing it to the next processor. There's like variables and things in here. And then that's going to then download it and call it name.dmg, which is the name that we set earlier. And it's quite clever, because they're going to be using some of these standard HTTP headers. So things like last modified, etag, for example, so it won't re-download every time, so it should just download once. Some applications, if they're using CDNs, etc., you might see multiple downloads, but it should be processing down the chain for you on this as well. The nice thing as well, the next stuff, and this is where the really cool stuff comes in, you can do code signature verification. So where this comes in, and this is why I see the automation kind of beating what we do, because how many folks here, every time you've downloaded an app to put it into Composer, how many times have you actually checked its code signature? Yeah, you checked them? Cool, congrats. I'm far too lazy for that. So, and an example of this is where the kind of issue kind of comes, or the reason why you might do this, is things like Caranger, the transmission bug, where someone hacked the web server that was hosting transmission and they swapped out the app with their own version. But their own version was signed with a different code signature. So if you'd used an Autopkg for that, Autopkg would have failed and stopped the download process, stopped it not going any further to the PKG or anything, because it had a different code signature. So this can actually make you more secure, because you're going to validify the content. Now, PKG recipe, it's a similar kind of thing. The difference here, we've got a parent recipe here as well. So you can have a recipe, I could use someone's .download recipe, and I could create my own PKG one, and you can kind of reference them across, and this is where you see that line. On here, we're creating a folder, and we're copying the app bundle, and then we're grabbing the version of the application outside the info P list, and then we're creating a PKG. This all makes Composer sad, because we haven't had to touch Composer, and now we've got a PKG. So we've downloaded the item, we've verified the code signature, now we've got a PKG. Last step, the JSS recipe. So the JSS recipe, you've got different inputs here, so you've got other things you can change. For example, you folks might decide the category. There's a different category for you might want to choose on here. There's different, with the JSS stuff, there's also like template XML files, so you can choose how to build the smart groups, etc., and maybe direct that in a different way that you wish. There's a standard convention with some of these things, and I'll show you a resource where you can look at that. And again, at the bottom, so the parent recipe here is the PKG. So the JSS's parent is the PKG recipe, the PKG's parent is the download. And so the process is, then you have to reverse it, is download first, package, and then JSS, so it uploads to your JSS. And yep, this is where we talk about the importer bit, using those variables, bringing it in, which makes Casper Admin sad, because you're not using Casper Admin now either. Jamf Admin, sorry, or in a week, or whatever. This is also a, so whereas before we were just taking delivery of something that was already packaged and just sent to it, we just told it the address. Now instead we're looking at, it's automated, it's like a factory, like an assembly line. You know, you've got your .download, you put all these component parts together, every processor is another step, and in the end you end up with a finished product that you can then use. So Autopkg 1 came out with this new thing about trust verification. So anybody running Autopkg, who's seen this? You must have seen this, cool. And it's caused a bit of a shock when this kind of happened, but this is a warning kind of thing. You can have it so that it hard fails when this happens. But the main thing is, when you looked at those recipes, what happens if someone changes the URL and points it to somewhere that downloads another dodgy version, or an application that's got some rootkit in there, for example, or something. So you end up, so you don't want a surprise. You don't want to be expecting your app to download as one thing, and then something else to appear. So the way this works is you have this override. This is where you put your customizations in, your own little flair kind of onto things. It brings in all those inputs that you had in the top of those recipes, so you can change in here. Again, we said about changing the categories, etc. But the main thing is at the bottom of it, it has hashes, the SHA hashes, the git commit hashes of those files. So if ever they're changed, then you'll get that error message, and so you know that you need to go back in, check the recipes, do a Google, have a look, see what changes have been made, and then you can update the recipe. You update the repo with the recipe setting, and then update trust info on the recipe itself to make it happy, and it should just be working there for you. If you're trying to get into Autopkg, I would really recommend using the command line here, using this run command with the -VVV, and what we'll see is you'll see every step of that process in that order. I say it's very much step 1, step 2, step 3, so it's really handy to give you an idea of what's happening. With the JSS recipes, once this is done, the package should be uploaded, there should be a policy there for you, and what you'll also see as well is a smart group created. And by default, it will go into this testing group, which can be a static group or could be a smart group that you add devices to, and it will just be in self-service. So even if you're not going to have Autopkg auto-deploy your stuff, you can have it package the stuff for you. You can get an email every time it's got new software. So you can just have it sit there available for you, and then you guys scope it as you need. So it's that thing of kind of watching and kind of being mindful of what it's doing, but letting the automation kind of take itself on that course. Some Autopkg resources. So there's the Autopkg wiki. There's the Autopkgr wiki. Now, Elliot Jordan's done a number of talks here about, or the Guthrie rather, about different workflows of using Jamf and the Autopkg stuff. So if this is something new for you guys to get into, have a look and go through there. There's lessons and stuff. It's really good to get you going on here. And then if you want to do something really crazy, and I'm not obviously going to miss a chance for a bit of self-promotion, we've got our JamJar project that we use at DataJar. And JamJar's Jamf, Autopkg, and Monkey from DataJar, hence the Jam. I'm terrible. I'm making all the worst named projects. It's brilliant. And so that's just another way. And we've got one central Autopkg repo. We're actually using Monkey, but Monkey driven by Jamf. But again, Autopkg is that key bit in the middle where we've got over 200 titles that we're deploying now through Autopkg. So we don't really touch Composer anymore. And again, if you want to reach out for more help, we're going to go to Slack. There's an Autopkg channel. And what's awesome is the fact that it's a real community thing. We've got maybe 80 recipes now that anybody can use to download their stuff. How many recipe authors do we have here? How many people have got their own Autopkg recipes? Cool. So thank you. So I'm probably using your recipes. You could be using mine, but we're all collaborating and helping each other out. So thank you. Right. So some choices here. So when you're asked to deploy an application, you need to kind of ask yourself some questions. If the app's only available on the App Store, then obviously you're going to go VPP. If it's not available on the App Store, then you're going to go this other route. Maybe you'll go Autopkg. If the app offers an in-app purchase, maybe what you decide that you want to do in the end is actually buy it through VPP, package it up, deploy it, and then deploy the other stuff, or try and build up these other workflows. Do you really have to worry about maintaining versions? We deal with a lot of customers who kind of engage with us initially where they want a testing and release cycle. They want us to go through every version with them, 2-week test period, and get them to check it. We don't. Because we're doing this automated packaging thing with Autopkg. We have these conversations and dialogue with them along the lines of your iOS devices update your applications automatically. We're validifying the content. We're using code signature verification. Oh, there's also a virus total processor at the end, so it can submit to virus total and then warn you if there's anything known in there as well. And we're giving people the stuff like it works out within 14 days of the update coming out, and it should be delivered, but it could actually be on the same day. We stagger things, but we've had one customer have an issue where we upgraded a version of Firefox too far ahead for their SAP plugin, so we've had to revert it. But the cool thing is, if you've used Monkey, Monkey's a bit difficult to downgrade software, and obviously Monkey, like I said, we're using the Jamf to deliver it, but Jamf doesn't care. It was quite handy. We could just easily revert them. And the other thing, when you look at the application, if the application is available on the App Store and through the vendor's website, is there going to be some annoying update nags? So Slack again. Who's seen this? You deploy this out? Yep. So they're using some framework. You've got like Sparkle and Squirrel and a few others, Hockey, I think, these in-app updaters. Now, Slack will prompt you here, and you can't disable it as an admin. Well, except you can. The problem here is the fact that we're not using VPP. So for this application, for Slack, if you use VPP, there's no auto-update prompts because it goes through the VPP mechanism. So you solved that issue. So it's knowing what it is that you're doing. And then you can be a little bit smug when that's happened. When you know that you've done it, it's all sorted, and you know that you have chosen wisely. I might have dragged these slides out a little bit long. And then you can go back to doing what you're good at, engaging with your customers, being available for them, telling them to turn it off and back on again. And that's kind of what we need to be engaging with our customers, our users, whatever. We need to be developing our solutions, hanging out on Slack, Jamf Nation, whatever. We shouldn't really be sitting in front of Compose all day long. So that was 2 methods, and I'm now going to hand you over to John, who's going to talk about Patch.
Thank you, sir. All right, thanks everybody. So really great workflows with Autopkg and VPP that Ben walked us through, and I want to talk specifically about how those can apply to Patch and really with Patch policies and the stuff that we've got coming in version 10 next week. So if we take out all tool sets in general, and we just focus on the problem of solving Patch, you guys have probably seen this. We've used this for a little while. Patch is really some process including these 4 steps. You have to identify what devices need it. You have to package it. You have to upload that to be made available to the client devices. And then you actually have to deploy that device, to those devices rather. So it's really kind of one of those 4. And so in 9.9.3, we released patch reporting, as it's called in product today, and that's really focused on the identification step. And how do I know what devices in my environment need a thing? In version 10, the next step of that is actually deploying that to the devices through patch policies. So we talked about that a little bit in the keynote. We'll have a session Thursday at 1 o'clock called What's New in Patch, that you can come and learn a little bit more about that. So we won't dive too far into that overall process, but it does leave the 2 of packaging and uploading. So you guys can probably see a little bit of where this is going, generally speaking. Well, Ben just talked a lot about what's available in tools that exist. And we have gone through, should we create our own packaging tools? Should we create our own easier ways to upload and things to do that? But really, at the end of the day, there's things in market, be it Autopkg, like Ben was just talking about, and others that are already doing this and already doing it great. And so how can we provide interfaces into the product so that this stuff works well and works really seamlessly? So in particular, Autopkg is the package identification and effect of the upload of the JSS importer or some other tools that are there to when a new title is available. I want to know that it's available. I want to use the download and get that new package it how I need to, and then from there I can deploy that. Then we have to have something within Jamf Pro to take that, whether that's the JSS importer or something to take that new package and make that available. So package is identified. We want to make that or understand that and have some automated process grab that and then actually upload that to our distribution servers, whether that's the Jamf Cloud distribution server or other distribution points that you have and anything that you want to go through there. So really, when we look at the packaging and uploading, we've got most of the package stuff already available through tools that are there in Autopkg and other tools that exist. And then the changes to be able to make that available in our distribution points is available through the JSS importer and some other tools that we have there. We have a couple changes that we intend to make that more simple. But effectively, then you can look at, well, we have an answer for all the stages of patch. It may not be stuff that we have necessarily built into product entirely, but going back to what Charles was mentioning in the keynote, Jamf and is something that we're trying to do more and more of how do we integrate with existing tools. We don't need to write anything that's not uniquely better than something that exists, and it moves us much quicker to be able to provide an answer for this stuff. There is another part that we, kind of a hurdle, I suppose, that we have yet to get over. So when we look at the big 4 steps, there's still the identify piece, and the titles that we know are there. So right now, you can only get the stuff from Jamf, and actually that's 40 different titles that we have available, but making it available for any of your patch sources for Jamf Pro to monitor those as well. So this allows you as an admin to create your own titles, to be able to have Jamf Pro monitor that, so it can subscribe to that title to get all the same functionality, like notify when there's a new one available, get the updates already created, and actually all the way down to auto scoping for the titles that you care about and the things that you're using, and whether this is internal versions of apps or apps that aren't available in other places. We wanted to provide a way for you to have an external source for those patches. So we're really excited about what this means overall, especially when looking at the total integration and the rest of the things that are in the community. We've got the identify piece, we've got the apply, package through things like AutoPkg, and upload. And when we add the ability for you to have your own custom sources, patch external sources, then you can have it monitoring the stuff that comes from Jamf Nation and everything through there. So this is work that we're doing right now. It is probably one of the more sought after feature requests around patch in general is let me add my own titles, how come I can't add my own titles, those sorts of things. And we're certainly making progress as fast as we can to get that available to you. A couple other things in that, and you may be thinking, well, if I can make my own patch external server, how do I do that? We've never talked about that. We've made Jamf's server and we know what's there, but how do I actually make one of my own? So a couple different things that I'll share with you that we're trying to do. The first is that as with anything that we're doing, and we have a responsibility to kind of show you how it works and teach you and that sort of thing. So we'll have knowledge-based articles, we'll have tech papers written to kind of talk about both what is the format of a Jamf patch definition, because we kind of have our own format, and then also what does the server need to look like in order for my Jamf Pro server to read that appropriately and know and kind of get all the functionality that's happening. So we'll have that documentation there, but sometimes I just want an easy button and I want to rock and roll and get started. So Bryson Tyrell, who is he's around, if you guys know Bryson, he's been just a fantastic member of the community and also is a Jamf, so we get that benefit. He's been working with us and talking about the installing and how do I get a server. Bryson's made a server installer. He told me yesterday, oh, the GUI's just not ready yet. I don't know what that means, but he's shipping it in the marketplace. So that will be available at marketplace.jamf.com. So from there, you can grab that, download that, and you've got a server that Jamf Pro will be able to connect up to and read the patch sources from. The last piece is how do I get what does the patch definition from Jamf look like and how should that look and what do I need to do? So like I said, we'll have some tech papers that talk about that, but we're also working on tools to take an AutoPkg recipe and translate and actually update the Jamf patch definition from new versions from AutoPkg. So a new version comes out, we're writing a tool that will actually grab that and say, hey, there's a new version here based on what the community has done. And what we're hoping to see at the end is that there's a way for you to create your own server, another way for you to share a server, if there's a GitHub repo, if there's something that, these are all the different branches off of the main, and whatever you want to make so that we can ultimately get the patches deployed to our devices of all the titles that we care about without necessarily having to duplicate the effort. So I may not have to do the same thing that you're doing if we both care about the same title. So that's the work that we're doing. We're pretty excited about that, and I was glad to get to come up and talk about this. Ben said we're going to save all the questions at the end, and they're all going to come to me. I have a feeling there's some about AutoPkg as well. We're just the VPP workflow, so if you guys have any questions, Jonah mentioned you'll have to come up to the microphones so that we can get those on the recording, but we'd love to answer any questions you have. And not everybody at once. Or anybody at all.
Sorry, I was saying about leaving the questions to the end because obviously wanted John to be able to go through and add those bits. But Autopkg coming into patch, that's a thing, right?
It's a great thing. Yeah.
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 Nobody else is really excited about it. There's three of us. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
First, I just want to say thanks, Mr. McMeel, for making me look good at my job. It helped me out a lot.
Amen.
Cool.
From Kodiakalan Borough School District, like reading your post on Jamf Nation and even the McMeel website. It's, whatever you said was kind of like God to us, so I appreciate it. You answered a question about...
Joe keeps saying his head will get bigger and bigger.
You had a slide up there about the apps don't meet the requirement for an iPad. How did you solve that? Because it had to do with iOS 11 coming out. And,
Yeah. So I think there was some enhancement that Jamf did with 9.101 about the different app requirements. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not sure if that resolved the issue for me or if it was, because I've never really messed about too much with an older, like an iOS 9 device and deploying the software to it. Sorry, we were waiting for that gentleman to ask a question, so that's why John's laughing now. So I literally did what I've been doing a lot more lately and just left the JSS to sort it out. He said it didn't meet the requirements, And then it's obviously gone through some process and gone, well, hey, I'm iOS 9. The VPP stuff's valid. So this is still an iOS 9 compatible version. It just did it. I left it and it cleared itself up. It's pretty cool. Again, being lazy, it's good.
Thanks.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for a great session. I have a question regarding old versions sitting in your distribution service or file shares or whatever. How do you deal with cleaning up old versions after you're done patching and you verify that it's good?
So Craig, who's kind of the main maintainer of the JSS importer bit for the Autopkg, he's got another thing called spruce. So it's a GitHub product called spruce. And you would run that against your JSS, and it would give you an output of these are redundant packages, policies, and things. It kind of goes through and says, well, this package isn't being used in a policy, it's not being used in a configuration, or this smart group's obsolete. Really good for that, really good. So when I was, that's what I would use. And I was doing that annually. I was just kind of, when the time the push cert needs to be renewed, it was kind of, I'll just run this now as a little reminder and just kind of tidy things up. But spruce is basically is my recommendation. And I think, as I was saying it, other people were agreeing, or people were saying spruce as well. Is there anything else anybody else would recommend, or is it just spruce? Spruce.
Any answer from Jamf on this? No?
So
Sorry.
spruce.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Today.
Yeah. Robert, we're not making you wait till the very end. That's just what happened. Okay, go ahead.
Couple of things. First is the JSS importer. Shea doesn't use Jamf anymore,
No.
and I think the community has to maybe help out a bit here, because it sounds like there's going to have to be major changes here. I'm still trying to get my head around. Patch policies only apply to computers that already have a title, so we can't use them to offer a title to a computer, to a user. So that means this integration is going to have to still create a policy for people to obtain a title and a patch policy, hopefully at the same time automatically. Maybe with JSS importer or with another API tool. But yeah, it sounds like.
Yeah, so
Something
today,
quite
patch
different.
policies do not do the initial installation of an app. So an app has to be present to be eligible for a patch policy. That's stuff that we've got written down to take a look at and make some changes to. That said, with or without that, the point about any API changes we'd have to do, what maintenance of the JSS importer would have to happen, that's all great stuff. And we will be making changes to the API on our side. The integration with AutoPkg should require very little changes to existing stuff. It's more issues in JCDS upload and some of that sort of stuff that we're trying to make easier and better.
Yeah, okay.
As Graham said, so Craig doesn't really have a JSS anymore, so the kind of the JSS importer thing, he's doing an update to it. I see you've been working with Slack on there, which is cool. But again, it might need someone to kind of be a custodian and take it on. Also, the same thing with Autopkg, where Lindy Group, they've just kind of asked for help with the project as well. I don't think there's a maintainer there yet. So kind of hoping that this will spur someone's interest to kind of bring in the patch functionality and maybe just start driving on and helping maintain them as well. So.
Yeah.
And I was actually going to ask if Jamf was going to consider adopting at least the JSS importer, if not Autopkg is one of the.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so that's one question that I had. Another one is you've built in some nice functionality with patch revolving around understanding what applications need to be open when you're trying to patch something, and and deferment options, but they only work for self-service generally.
Potentially. So the
that kind of technology should be extended to any update policy. You shouldn't. This is an argument I had with your predecessor about, well, that's great for maybe 70% of people that they can use, force their users to go to self-service and apply
Right.
updates, just like going to the App Store and applying an update to your phone. But not
Right.
every environment has that, especially labs, something like that. You need to have that functionality, across the whole.
Yeah.
And again, he also raised a very valid point that I was going to bring up about making packages available for deployment. And then we've also discussed the possibility of building some spruce-like functionality in the JSS
Right.
down the road to be able to say, hey, these packages and scripts are no longer in use.
Yep.
Do you want to clean them up?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just making a note. Yeah, I feel like I have to, like, I'm not tweeting or whatever. Guess what Robert Hammond just said to me. Yeah. Yeah.
So this isn't necessarily to packaging, but I think it's kind of a related topic. So obviously we've got with AutoPkgr and AutoPkg, we have these kind of workflows to kind of say, hey, one person makes the recipe, that's kick ass, or excuse me, kick butt, and now everyone can utilize that functionality. Is there a thought of doing something similar with configuration profiles, having a capability to do that within the JSS, or just simply have a community-driven, hey, I've built a profile that suppresses those auto updates that are not deployed through VPP for things like Sparkle and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, there have absolutely been, what are the common things that we can bring into one place and have Jamf Pro connect up to that place and know, here's the thing. So right now there's scripts, there's composer packages, there's some stuff that's there in, whether the workflow is great or not, there's some steps that make some of that, and we want to extend that more and more and make that be not having to ask you to leave where you're working to get that thing. So that's definitely, configuration profiles came up. The easy stuff is scripts, packages, yeah, no, I'm just blanking. But yeah, absolutely stuff that we're looking at in different ways that we can, what are all the things that we are doing commonly that we can, hey, this is here and you can use it if you want. You don't need to reinvent the wheel or do it again and again and again. So, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, and last year I did a talk on config profiles, and there was loads of links there about different people's GitHub repos. So Nick McSpadden, Rich Troughton, Rusty Myers. I think there's some of the guys, some of the AMSYS guys as well, some of their profiles. Hey, Darren. I'm not going to talk to the other two. So no, hey. Hi, Mum. So yeah, there is that community stuff out there that can be really helpful for all this. And for the Sparkle thing, there's Extinguished by Alistair Banks, which was an I worked with him a little bit there. It's quite a fun project.
Yeah.
So are there plans in the future to allow patch policies to appear like in pre-stage enrollments to help us get a better handle on zero touch and dep and
Yeah, so there are projects that we are kicking off as overall provisioning, I suppose you could say. And from an abstract level, I've got a device from Apple, and I want to make that look like X and have all the things that are on there, using as much of the stuff I've already got defined as possible.
Yeah.
And just taking that and saying, this is going to be that, and put all these things on that device. And then out of that comes, though, well, when should it go on? How should this happen? Is it self-service driven versus not? And how do we effectively take the framework and just apply it to take this device and make it look like this?
Make it look like
In that would, include the latest version of this title, be a part of that. That would certainly be, a natural addition to that work as we kind of go along through the steps of that.
and then kind of a follow-up
Yeah.
scripts as a payload
In a patch policy?
in a patch policy rather than having to use
Yeah.
download the package it up. That kind of
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely. And we'll
Pull it
talk
from an
more.
Atom feed.
Oh, I'm sorry, what's that?
Pull it from an Atom feed or something.
Yeah, we'll talk some more about some of the other stuff that we've got and kind of talking about for patch in the What's New in Patch session that you can go and watch and participate in. But there are things that patch policies have that policies don't, and same vice versa. And we're trying to find out what might we need to do to bring those together. From a policies to patch policy, scripts is like number one on the list. Specifying a distribution point, run this from that distribution point, and a failover as well. Right now, patch policies execute on the default distribution point for the device that's executing. So that's kind of some we're bringing that way, and then from the other side, the eligible devices, the automated scoping, the many to one, like there's a couple things that we're trying to cram in there, and scripts is an easy addition, obviously, to that. So we want to bring that together, and if you guys have other thoughts or what you might need to do, we heard some stuff on the beta feedback, and the more the merrier for what we might need to do on that.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you want me to turn his microphone around?
Yeah.
One last question. Will we ever see the end of the unknown definition for patch reporting? That is the stupidest thing in the JSS, in my opinion.
So I would argue that it's not the stupidest thing in the JSS, but that's a whole other conversation. So not that there's not stupid things in the JSS. That's not what
Should
I'm
we open that question out to the floor?
No. Yeah. I'm going to need to write a lot of things down. No, so will the unknown version ever go away? I'll even stop. So the unknown version right now is for versions that we don't know about or versions that you don't have a patch source that knows there's a new thing. So it's both, this is potentially older or potentially newer than what's on the device. So we take that. Is the potentially newer something that we have space to fix? Yes. So right now, if Google Chrome comes out with a new version, which it probably just did, and then another one, those will come back as a newer version and will show up as unknown. So we have some work that we want to do. A part of that could be a patch external source. That if that's stuff that you're managing, that could come up and we can, do something. We know we have work to do. Is there work for the stuff that's previous, and will that ever go away? I don't think so. You're shaking your head no, so that's good. You agree with me. We got one. So there's some software vendors that we don't have to talk about, but a lot of software vendors, not a lot, some will change their versioning scheme, or some will do something different, version A to version B, then they go to version 1, and then 37 character carrots emoji, who knows? So those would still fall under the unknown. So there's still this catch-all that's there that we know we'll have to keep around, but we know on that other side we got some work we could do.
And this is kind of the challenges with, as I was dubbing it in our conversations, the patch recipes and how we're going to do the Autopkg integration. Because Autopkg is great, but it knows at that moment in time what that version is.
Right.
It doesn't know about the historical. So it's kind of trying to figure out, and kind of that's why we want to get this out here now, to get community feedback and get maybe talk to people on Slack or whatever. Is there a place where we could have these JSON files for the patch definitions that we all subscribe to? They have like so we could have someone who creates one, and if you've created it and you've had it running for 6 months, you might have 10 versions. Well, I don't want my JSS to say unknown because I haven't got that knowledge. So is there going to be a mechanism in which we can share that with the patch servers and all these things? And that's those conversations that need to be had and figured out.
Yeah. We've got another session like we talked about, what's new in patch. It's 4:52, which means we're a little bit over. Thank you guys for sticking around and hanging out. I can be here. Yeah.